In our headlines on this Tuesday, August 4th, here in South Korea, a powerful institution built over nearly 8 decades is being dismantled as South Korea prepares for sweeping changes to its prosecution system. South Korea's inflation rate is back in the 2% range, but rising vegetable prices amid extreme heat remain a key concern for policymakers. And the brutal heat persists nationwide, with warnings in place for Seoul, parts of Gyeonggi-do province, Jeonju in Jeollabuk-do province, as well as Gwangju and much of Jeollanam-do province. We start with the Cabinet's approval of a reform bill on this Tuesday that looks to fundamentally reshape South Korea's criminal justice system. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin explains.
The first step toward normalizing an abnormal criminal justice system. That's how President Lee Jae-myung described the amendment to Korea's Criminal Procedure Act approved by the cabinet on Tuesday.
수사 기소 분리는 이러한 비정상적 형사사법 시스템을 정상화하는 첫 출발입니다.
The amendment strips prosecutors of their remaining direct investigative powers. It will leave prosecutors with the authority to decide whether to file charges based on evidence gathered by police or other investigative agencies. They would only be able to request additional investigations when deemed necessary. Previously, prosecutors could directly question suspects or witnesses and collect additional evidence after receiving cases from police. Speaking ahead of the cabinet's deliberation, Lee argued that prosecutors have long exercised excessive authority across the criminal justice process, from investigations to prosecutions.
검찰 내의 일부 집단은 기소를 위해서 수사할 수 있다라는 이 권한을 무소불위로 악용하며 있는 사건을 덮거나 누군가를 정해놓고 처벌하기 위해 별건 수사, 먼지털이 표적 수사를 관행처럼 되풀이해 왔습니다.
At the same time, Lee acknowledged growing concerns over concentrating investigative powers in the hands of the police, saying follow-up measures would be needed.
명백한 수사상의 비위를 저지른다 그러면 최소 해임 파면해야 되지 않냐. 제가 보기에는. 아니면 아예 영구적으로 수사는 앞으로 하지 말고 다른 일 해라.
The revised act requires police to complete supplementary investigations requested by prosecutors within 1 month. The deadline may be extended by up to 1 additional month. The investigative rules until now allowed up to 3 months, but the amendment shortens the time frame and codifies it into law. And those who fail to comply with requests for supplementary investigations could face disciplinary action, while cases may also be reassigned to another investigative unit. The revision will take effect on October 2nd, the day 2 new government agencies, one responsible for investigations and the other for prosecutions, are set to be launched. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
And the planned changes within the country's criminal justice system are deepening the political divide at the National Assembly as lawmakers engage in a heated legal battle. Our political correspondent Moon Hae-ryun covers the conflict.
Korea's ruling and opposition parties are divided over a sweeping overhaul of the role of prosecutors in the criminal investigation system as the cabinet took up the bill on Tuesday.
The amendment, once it takes effect on October 2nd, strips prosecutors of their power to investigate cases directly or order police to carry out further investigations. In their place, the law enshrines a clear split between investigation and prosecution, while requiring police and prosecutors to cooperate at every stage of the case. The Democratic Party defended the legislation during a public briefing at the National Assembly on Monday, arguing that it strengthens victim protections and clarifies investigative procedures. Acting Party Chairman Han Byung-do described the bill as the next essential stage of judicial reform.
The revision is not the end of prosecution reform, but the beginning of a criminal justice system centered on the people. It marks a historic institutional change by ending a prosecutor-centered system and separating investigative and prosecutorial powers.
Meanwhile, the main opposition, People Power Party, renewed its call for President Lee Jae-myung to veto the bill ahead of the cabinet meeting, while also preparing a constitutional challenge. Party Chairman Chang Dong-hyuk warned the legislation would undermine the country's long-standing judicial framework.
A judicial system maintained for 78 years has been dismantled overnight. Rebuilding it will take enormous time, or it may prove impossible to restore properly.
Meanwhile, National Office of Investigation Commissioner Hong Seok-ki said police would work to improve the completeness of investigations before referring cases to prosecutors, expressing confidence that closer consultation between the two agencies would reduce the need for additional investigations under the revised system. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
In other news now, South Korea's inflation rate has returned to the 2% range for the first time in 3 months as easing oil and food price pressures helped slow overall price growth. Our Lee Ju-yeon has more.
Consumer price inflation returned to the 2% range for the first time in 3 months. According to the Ministry of Data and Statistics on Tuesday, consumer price inflation, which has stayed in the 3% range in May and June, slowed in July with just a 2.8% increase compared to the same time the previous year. Petroleum product prices remain well above last year's level, though the rate of gain narrowed last month. Petroleum product prices rose 15.5% in July compared to the previous year, cooling down from a nearly 25% increase in June. Officials attributed the slowing down to falling global oil prices and the extension of the government's price cap.
As for petroleum products, the pace of price increases slowed from the previous month, largely due to a slight decline in global oil prices and the government's market stabilization measures, including its price cap policy.
Slower growth in prices for agricultural, livestock, and fisheries products also contributed to the return to the 2% range. Prices in this sector rose just 0.9% on year last month, narrowing significantly from increases of more than 3% in June. However, for leafy vegetables, recent extreme heat has led to a price surge. Compared to the previous month, lettuce prices rose more than 17% and spinach jumped nearly 43%. The government pledged to closely monitor these trends, as hot weather in July and August usually affects general vegetable prices. With government-backed discount programs continuing into August, officials noted that upcoming price movements are expected to hinge on the impact of these measures. Lee Ju-yeon, Arirang News.
And up next, we continue our coverage of this week's brutal heat wave with our team on the ground. And today, my colleague Cho Young-eun joins me from the city of Jeonju. So, Young-eun, how are you holding up there?
Good afternoon, Sunny. I'm coming to you live from Jeonju in Jeollabuk-do province, one of the cities placed under the highest level severe heat wave warning on Tuesday. The heat here is relentless. The current temperature stands at 37 degrees Celsius. Yet the feels-like temperature is even hotter under the sun. As of 11 a.m. on Tuesday, severe heat wave warnings are in effect for Seoul, Goyang, and Ansong in Gyeonggi-do province, Jeonju in Jeollabuk-do province, as well as Gwangju in much of Jeollanam-do province. Seoul is forecast to reach 38 degrees Celsius, leaving the area under the nation's highest level severe heat wave warning for the first time on record this year. Many people here in Jeonju say they have never experienced heat quite like this. Take a listen.
I rented an electric cart today, but it's so hot that it didn't make any difference. Today is my girlfriend's and my 100th day together, so we came to make matching rings. At this rate, the rings might melt.
I'm completely drenched in sweat. It's so hot, I thought I was going to pass out. The sun in Jeonju is incredibly intense. It's just unbelievably hot.
Right, and in response, Young-eun, what measures are authorities there taking to better protect the public from the dangerous heat?
Right, Sunny. Officials warn that the prolonged heat is increasingly becoming a compound disaster with growing concerns for health and safety. So according to the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters, a total of 2,025 people have suffered heat-related illnesses this year, with 16 deaths reported as of Sunday. Meanwhile, Jeonju also raised its emergency operations to level 2 following the highest level severe heat wave warning on Tuesday. This means mobilizing emergency funds, deploying inspectors, and intensifying safety checks for vulnerable populations and outdoor workers as extreme temperatures persist. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency is urging people to avoid outdoor activities during the hottest hours of the day, stay well hydrated, and seek shelter in air-conditioned spaces whenever possible. The region has also been relatively little rainfall this monsoon season, allowing more heat to build up during the day and linger well into the night, fueling persistent tropical nights. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Yeon, thank you for that coverage. Now do seek some shelter from the scorching sun yourself. US President Donald Trump claims Iran has one last opportunity for a deal as his administration pushes for talks on nuclear concerns and control over the Strait of Hormuz. Our Kim Bo-kyung has the latest.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the talks with Iran are underway. Trump, speaking at the Oval Office on Monday, escalated the pressure by saying this was Iran's last chance before decapitation, signaling that the U.S. could still launch the large-scale strikes on Iran. Trump, who recently held off with an order to American forces to carry out strikes at the request of Gulf allies, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, added that he hopes Iran will come to its senses to grab one last chance to strike a deal.
Now, we've already, through lots of large attacks, but they were normal large. Hopefully they'll come to their senses, because what happened cannot have a nuclear weapon, but hopefully they'll come to their senses.
Trump added that the first phase of negotiations will be opening the Strait of Hormuz, which will be followed by addressing U.S. concerns over Iran's nuclear program, which will take a little while. He underlined that Washington will not allow Iran to charge commercial vessels transit fees for passing through the strait.
And no, there's not going to be charging. We're not talking about charging at all. There won't be charging.
This comes after Iran said it was not negotiating with the U.S. and had no plans to do so. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baei said at a briefing Monday local time that Iran and Oman were currently negotiating an agreement on a safe transit route for vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz. He stressed that the talks are a matter between Iran and Oman, that there is no role for the U.S. to play in the negotiations. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, last week, an 11-country coalition, including South Korea, issued a warning against fake online job applications by North Korea. The regime, however, called the warning a smear campaign designed to justify international pressure. Our Kim Do-yeon files this report.
It has been widely reported for years that North Korea's undercover IT workers have tried to secure remote jobs from around the world. The international community is warning businesses to take caution as hiring these operatives not only funds illegal activities by the Kim regime, but leaves companies exposed to theft. Pyongyang is now claiming that this is a, quote, smear campaign designed to tarnish its image and justify international pressure. In a statement released through state media on Tuesday, Pyongyang's foreign ministry dismissed a joint security advisory issued last week by 11 countries under the Multilateral Sanctions Monitoring Team, or MSMT. The regime labeled the coalition an illegal phantom organization spreading false information. Pyongyang also accused the United States of hypocrisy and of militarizing cyberspace, stating it is absurd for Washington to accuse others of cyber threats while operating the world's largest cyber force and conducting allied cyber warfare drills like Cyber Flag. The MSMT advisory, backed by South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, states that North Korea relies on a global network of skilled IT workers using forged documents third-party proxies and increasingly sophisticated tools like artificial intelligence to conceal their activities. These operatives remit their salaries back to Pyongyang to fund its nuclear and missile programs while acting as severe insider threats with access to companies' digital assets. To block this revenue stream, allied nations are demanding that private companies enforce strict identity verification, mandate video interviews, and flag suspicious requests for cryptocurrency payments. The scale of these operations is vast. According to a recent report by Blockade, North Korea accounts for more than half of all digital assets stolen in the first half of the year. Among the $1.1 billion worth of stolen crypto globally, more than 600 million is attributed to hackers and IT operatives linked to the regime. 김도현, Arirang News.
And North Korea has condemned the most recent military cooperation among South Korea, the US and Japan, claiming it would respond with, quote, a new level of deterrence. In a commentary carried by its state media on this Tuesday, Pyongyang pointed to the US-led 2026 RIMPAC naval drills, including during which, that is, Seoul and Tokyo assumed key command roles as evidence of Washington's expanding trilateral collaboration. The commentary also targeted recent U.S.-South Korea exercises and the Lee Jae-myung administration's push for nuclear-powered submarines. The regime accused the three nations of driving a new security crisis across the Asia-Pacific. Elsewhere, more than 6,000 people have been killed by the two powerful earthquakes that struck Venezuela back in June. This is according to a report by Reuters, citing Venezuelan lawmakers who say the death toll has risen to 6,125. What's more, some 24,000 people remain in temporary shelters. Cleanup efforts are in their early stages, with only 16.5% of the debris cleared thus far. The World Bank estimates reconstruction could take more than a decade at the current pace. In other news now, a centuries-old Korean instrument is finding new life through the breath of two brothers and a single leaf. Our Shin So-eun has their story.
A clear, trembling melody lingers in the air, sounding almost like a reed instrument. Yet, the entire tune emerges from a single leaf, animated by the powerful breath of two performers. Known as chojeok, the Korean leaf flute presents musical wonder without strings or finger holes. Its play is set by narrowed air vibration and subtle movements of the oral structure, ultimately creating 3 ranges of octaves.
We use yearly resilient leaves, such as citrus, yuzu, and evergreen spindle. Because of their fragility and freshness, we carefully select them in cool places.
The history of chojeok dates back more than 5 centuries, with the instrument even played by King Yeonsan-gun. Finding the instrument's new generation, brothers Jeong Jae-young and Jeong Jae-ryong began reviving its lost repertoire by performing traditional music and K-pop hits like Golden from the movie K-pop Demon Hunters.
Since it dates back to 1493, the history of this instrument spans through everyone from kings and aristocrats to ordinary people.
However, the future of chojeok remains fragile. Following the death of its designated master last year, the two brothers are currently the only ones in this music scene without a transmission instructor above to guide them. A sense of wonder and affection for music has led them this far.
Unlike other renowned Korean instruments, chojeok is not taught in traditional music schools. I hope we can pave the way for students to learn chojeok in everyday classrooms.
Not every instrument that carries Korea's history is displayed behind glass, nor does everyone protecting the history stand in the spotlight. It is up to us to ensure that the sound of chojeok continues to keep Korea's musical history alive. Shin So-eun, Arirang News.
This is the world now. Russian officials say a Ukrainian drone came down on a crowded beach on the Black Sea coast, killing 7 people. 3 of them were children. The drone hit near the village of Archipo-Osipovka on Sunday at the height of the holiday season. It dropped toward the shoreline before erupting into a fireball. As well as the 7 deaths, 40 people were hurt and 17 of those were hospitalized. Krasnodar's governor called it, quote, a deliberate strike on civilians. Ukraine has not responded. Both sides deny they target civilians, and it is not yet clear what the drone was aiming at. Romania has blown up a rocky outcrop on the Danube River to steer more water towards its only working nuclear reactor. This comes as the drought in Eastern Europe has left river water levels too low to cool the nuclear plant. The controlled blast on Monday threw up a tower of water and rubble, clearing ground for a temporary dam to redirect water to the reactor. Romania had already shut one of its 2 nuclear plants last week. Upstream in Hungary, the Pax nuclear plant is down to just over 10% of capacity after the Danube hit a record low water level. Eastern European countries are looking to conserve energy, and 2 car makers have paused their Romanian car plants until August 19th. In the United States, 2 people in Michigan have died from an intestinal illness traced back to iceberg lettuce. Both had serious underlying conditions that the illness and dehydration may have worsened. Michigan has now logged more than 11,000 cases and 193 hospitalizations. The Food and Drug Administration has tied the outbreak to a Taylor Farms operation in central Mexico, but authorities are still hunting for other potential sources. U.S. pop star Ariana Grande will step out of public life once her tour wraps next month. A representative for the pop star told People magazine that her public-facing work has brought her, quote, endless ongoing public scrutiny. She has also pulled out of a Stephen Sondheim revival due to open at London's Barbican Centre in 2027. Grande has 3 dates left in Chicago before a 10-night run at London's O2 Arena, where her tour ends on September 1st. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
For the first time since the alert system was created, Seoul and parts of Gyeonggi-do province are under a severe heat wave warning, the highest level in the nation. Conditions felt oppressive across the capital today as the heat index surged past 38 degrees Celsius during peak hours. Meanwhile, over in the Gyeongsang-do provinces, temperatures dropped slightly, allowing authorities to step down their top alert to a standard heat wave warning. However, overnight relief remains out of reach. Seoul has now recorded its 13th consecutive tropical night, keeping thermal stress high around the clock. But the intense daytime heat is also triggering severe atmospheric instability. Expect sudden heavy downpours across the region through this evening, with localized rainfall ranging from 5 to 60 millimeters. Be prepared for rapid changes in visibility and sudden gusts. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 27 degrees, Daejeon 25, and Gwangju 26 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 38 degrees, Daegu 36, and Busan 33 degrees. We're in for some serious heat this week, so don't wait until you're thirsty to drink water, and make sure you're taking plenty of breaks in the shade. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session, so do stay with us and thank you for now.